Revolutionary greetings, comrades. I am Ngabuto Nicholas Mapena. We are discussing developments in South Africa. I know that some will start insulting me to say, why are you talking about what is happening in South Africa? When we discuss what is obtaining in South Africa, it's not about developing an opinion or taking sides on what is happening. It's about drawing lessons so that we can learn something as Zimbabweans. But in any case, we as Zimbabweans did not start today to follow closely what is happening in South Africa. You can go back to history. I'm talking about the 1980s history. It's a history. I'm not talking about the 18th or 19th century. No, about what happened was happening in the 80s, 90s. You know that the majority of us grew up playing South African music. For instance, I started playing Lady Smith Black Mambazo in 1982. At some point when I was a young boy, I thought that Peter Tinnett was a Zimbabwean. I didn't know. And the Paul Love. I thought they were Zimbabweans from Bedbridge. I was ignorant, of course, so I didn't know that they were South Africans. We played their music. We loved their music. Soul Brothers, I believe, were more popular in Zimbabwe than in South Africa. When I arrived in South Africa, I didn't really then develop that much interest about Soul Brothers or Tisha Nzunza. You remember Tisha Nzunza, you remember other Mpaqanga musicians. So we follow closely what is happening in South Africa. So it's not something that started today. There's a history to this. So on that morning, on a Sunday, on the 6th of July, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi addressed a press conference. We are not getting into the contents. I've seen an article written by my comrade from the SACP, putting forward her opinion about General Mkhwanazi, and we're not getting into that. Ours is to draw lessons, particularly on the conduct of a former liberation movement. We used to say that when a former liberation movement has been in power for 2 decades, it starts losing support from the mass of the people. It faces internal contradictions and a decline in electoral support. And some of the reasons of the electoral decline is corruption, nepotism, failure to transform society. In Zimbabwe, of course, ZANU-PF is a former reactionary liberation movement. Because when I speak to my comrades and say ZANU-PF a former liberation movement, they said, no, Comrade Mapena, you are misleading us. They've never been a liberation movement. They fought for liberation, but they were reactionary. So I have to put it in that context so that I will not be hammered by my comrades. The only time we came close to what we see obtaining in South Africa currently, where a minister of police, former minister of police, and other officials, generals, account for their actions. The only time we came close to that was in 1988 during the Willowville motor scandal, which cost the job of the late Innocent Ngala. In 1989, Minister Nyakumbo died under mysterious circumstances. He was linked to Willowville motor scandal. That's the time we came close to seeing government ministers in Zimbabwe appearing in court, an investigation being done uh, uh, on the conduct of ministers in carrying out their duties. Since then, you cannot, as a police officer, as General Mkhwanazi did, call a press conference, address the media in the manner in which he did, and remain in the country, alive, and continue working. It cannot happen in Zimbabwe. Blessed Gezo, a member of ZANU-PF, a war veterans, goes on national television, condemns 23rd agenda, speaks openly about corruption, as Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi did, General Mkhwanazi did. The next morning was out of Zimbabwe. So we believe and were told. Because he couldn't remain inside Zimbabwe after making those allegations. In South Africa, you then have people marching, carrying the photo of General Mkhwanazi, until he stops them, says, no, you cannot do this in my name. But there is no police that then arrest the demonstrators. There's no army that is sent to put off that demonstration. People are allowed to demonstrate. The general is still at work. You cannot be in Zimbabwe a member of the Zimbabwe Republic Police, go on public television, make allegations about the government, and you remain in the country, alive, kicking. It doesn't happen in Zimbabwe. So when we then say the African National Congress, ANC, as the governing party in South Africa, is different from ZANU-PF, comrades then say, no, Mabena, you are wrong. Yes, there's a relationship, a political relationship between the ANC and ZANU-PF. We've spoken about it. It's their choice, right? But in terms of how they conduct themselves, they are totally different. In 2008, it took almost 2 months to announce the presidential results, because we're told that Morgan Tsvangirai had scored about 73% of the vote. And ZANU-PF could not accept defeat. When the ANC scores 40% of the vote in 2024, it accepts the results. right? And the life moves on. Not in Zimbabwe. We all know, in South Africa, we all know that by 2029, after elections, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa will not be president. We all know this, right? But in Zimbabwe, ZANU-PF has just resolved that Emerson Mnangagwa must continue beyond his stipulated 2 terms in office to be president. Inside ZANU-PF, just read their constitution. Their Congress only elects, so what would elect the first secretary and president of ZANU-PF. Then the rest get appointed by one man. In the ANC, the entire National Executive Committee, including officials, 7 of them, now it's top 7, they get elected by delegates. That's why there's vigorous campaign within the structures of the ANC. Many Zimbabweans in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Europe, North America, are following closely on the Madlanga Commission and the ad hoc committee in Parliament. These interviews that are ongoing. As I speak now, most of you are keeping an eye on this channel while you are also checking on what former Minister Bheki Cele is saying. It's being questioned by parliamentarians. Something that does not happen in Zimbabwe. So the lesson for us, like I said, we are not getting into the content of what General Mkhwanazi said. Whether what he said was correct or was just making mere allegations, we are not getting into that. We are saying South Africans have a platform without fear or favor to express themselves publicly, and they do not get punished for expressing themselves. It is when you commit an offense that the law must take its course. If you make unfounded allegations against an individual, but you cannot be criminalized for alleging that a minister is corrupt. You cannot be criminalized. This cannot happen in Zimbabwe. So, as I conclude, we must allow in Zimbabwe people to express themselves. Lenin taught us about criticism. And we're talking about constructive criticism for the good of our nation. Because when you elect us, it means we derive power from you. I cannot be a member of parliament in Zimbabwe without you electing me, because I cannot impose myself. I cannot just walk up in the morning, go to parliament and take an oath and say I'm now a member of parliament. Or just go to State House and say I'm now the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe. No. It is you, the voters, that will say, we want Ngabuto Nicholas Mabena to be a councillor or a member of parliament or a president or a senate. Power we derive power from the mass of the people. When we derive power from the mass of the people, we must then account to those who have given us that power. If we misuse the power that was granted to us by the people have a right to withdraw that power from us. If Emmerson Mnangagwa, the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe, is confident that we Zimbabweans love him as our president and is doing a great job, he has no business in going to Mtare in a ZANU-PF conference together with the delegates of ZANU-PF and say the legal secretary of ZANU-PF, secretary for legal affairs in ZANU-PF, and also Minister of Justice must report in 2026 on resolution number 1, on how far they've gone. They don't have to go through this hurdle if they derive power from us. It will be us that will take to the streets carrying placards saying Mnangagwa is going nowhere, we love him, we want him to continue. Because when you are a leader, you derive power from the people, not from ZANU-PF. Because Mnangagwa must understand that is the president of Zimbabwe, whether I like him or I don't like him, whether I voted for him or I did not vote for him, he is my president. I'm a Zimbabwean, he's the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe. And his term of office comes to an end in 2028. We have said if ZANU-PF, as a part of which some of us were not members, want to keep him as their leader for life, that is their business. If comrades in the Zimbabwe Communist Party want to keep me for life as General Secretary, that's the business of members of the Zimbabwe Communist Party. But here we are talking of a president of Zimbabwe, that all of us as Zimbabweans, we must have a say. It cannot be a ZANU-PF issue because he does not derive his powers from ZANU-PF to be president of Zimbabwe. He derives his powers from us. That is, if we've ever held a democratic election. But because he knows that he does not derive this power, the power that he has, from us, right? Because electoral reforms have never been implemented. He knows that. This is why he doesn't want to come to us. As I've said, he does not need to come to us if we love him, if he's doing a great job. He does not have to tell us that he's doing a great job. It is us who should say, you are a great leader and I want you to stay on as president. Then indeed he will be deriving power from us, the mass of Zimbabwean people. So that's a distinct difference between the former liberation movement in Zimbabwe and the former liberation movement in South Africa. And why we are saying ZANU-PF is a reactionary liberation movement is that it wants to impose its will to the people. Power is derived from the people. The people have a sovereign right to withdraw that power from you, just as they have the sovereign right to give you the power. So if I put posters, or we put posters as the Zimbabwe Communist Party, we get to communities, we canvass for votes, you listen to us, you say, but these people seem to be making sense. Let's give them power for 5 years. right? After 5 years, after realizing that we misled you about what we said to an extent that you voted for us, they call it sweet talk, right? After 5 years, you then have a right to say, no, 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 you guys, this is what you said to us 5 years ago. You have not done anything. We are withdrawing that power from you. We are giving this power to other people. And us must accept. As we will celebrate if we get elected, if the power is granted to us, naturally we'll celebrate all celebration rallies to celebrate. When the power is withdrawn, we must accept. That's not what ZANU-PF is doing. So we're saying, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, if you are close to him, give him this video. If he was in Zimbabwe, he will not be alive, or he will be in exile. By now, he will be queuing Marabastad asking for a political asylum, because Zimbabwe cannot accept a police officer to do the things that he did. Just by merely addressing that press conference, making allegations against the government, he will not be around in Zimbabwe. Otherwise, please like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you are new. Otherwise, enjoy your evening. I was in Durban for 2 days for meetings. We are back in Johannesburg. Thank you so much. Goodbye.